So, my girlfriend is on a family vacation at the moment, and she always talks about not having enough space underneath for shoes in her closet. And she has these two kind of like dinky racks that not really like hold her shoes in place like she wants. So I thought it'd be kind of a cool idea to install and custom make like a shoe rack for in her closet to make all of her shoes fit, and then kind of give her a nice little surprise when she gets back from vacation. So let's get after it. The first step in making this was to plan it. I drew up the design and planned my cuts on a piece of graphing paper that I would use to cut out of the single sheet of plywood that I was going to buy for this. I started with 4 long cuts that I ripped on my table saw to make the plywood into workable sizes to be used and cut on the chop saw. Each of these long cuts were just under 12 inches, as I had to account for the blade thickness in the 4 cuts that I was going to do to size down this 4x8 plywood sheet. I brought the long pieces over to the chop saw and cut all the components of my project, where I was able to then do a dry assembly of how everything would come together. I would be using full dados for the joinery of this project, so I set the table saw to 3/4 inch in thickness, which would be the same as the plywood sheet that I had purchased, as well as 3/8 inch height to make sure that they were strong joints all throughout the piece. I started by using the dado on the table saw on the outer box sections that would make up the external surface of the cabinets, and that way once I got all those dry assembled, I could make sure that the internal dimensions were to my liking, and then I could go forward and do the dadoing to make sure that the internal parts of the cabinet were going to be in place to where I wanted them to be. After getting all the stationary pieces cut to length and dry assembled, I was able to do the final cuts for the adjustable shelves that was going to fit within the fixed pieces. So I just wanted to make sure all the fixed pieces were in place before cutting the removable or adjustable surfaces to length. In order to make the shelves adjustable, I drilled holes on both sides to put leveling hardware pieces in place in order to keep the shelves there. I wanted to make some sort of adjustable parts to this just because I didn't know exactly how she was going to like how everything turned out in the end, so I wanted to make sure that if she ever wanted to adjust something, she had the ability to do so. I decided to stain all the pieces before they glue up in order to make sure that an even coat was applied to everything and not have to worry about wood glue affecting the staining around the joints after I did the glue up of everything. To give the edges a finished look and not show the plywood structure of them, I decided to use some simple edge trim. I stained them all before cutting them once again to make it easier and less worrisome with how the wood glue could affect the staining process. After letting all the pieces that I stained sit overnight, I started to lay out the pieces to begin the glue up. This is a crucial part to make sure that everything is in its proper place, and it definitely speeds up the process. Thankfully, my dad was able to help provide an extra set of hands for a good majority of this project, which made the glue up much more manageable. I initially left the top piece of the cabinetry off, which would allow me to get access with my nailer to nail in the divider piece that separated the adjustable shelving compartment from the large boot storing compartment. As I went around, I put finishing nails in place while I was adjusting and placing my clamps on the project while the glue was setting up. Nails aren't crucial, so if you don't have a finished nailer, don't be too concerned, as the finished project is held together primarily by the wood glue itself. Raising your project, like I did with these 2x4s, helped to give access to the bottom surface for clamping and just makes the overall glue up a little bit more manageable. So definitely have some spare pieces on hand to elevate your project to help with providing some space for clamps. After getting the first box clamped up, I put it aside and completed the assembly of the other cubby. I then let the two pieces sit overnight to let the glue dry and set up completely. The next day, I took off all the clamps and began to work on the assembling of trim work for the units. When I got them both up on the table, I was extremely pleased at how the glue ups turned out. I started out by measuring the outside box dimensions and worked on trimming those pieces first. I started out by cutting the trim sections to length, then cut them at the 45 degrees for the outside boxes. I don't have any footage of the angled cuts, but I would definitely say that when you are doing this, be sure to make orientations of the angles on your pieces, because when you're doing a lot of trim, it's easy to flip the orientations when you're doing angles, and this can potentially lead to wasting of a good deal of trim if you're not careful about the process. After I got all the outside trim to size, I got to work on gluing and securing the pieces to the front of the unit. Once I tweezed most of the sliver out, which I still actually have the tip of it under my nail, so that'll be a while before that works its way out, I got back to finishing the glue up of the outer structure of the box. Once the outer box trim was in place, I measured the two internal pieces to cut the trim to fit on those faces. I finished with assembling the face trim that would go on the 3 shelving pieces and checked to make sure that the hardwood would work in keeping the shelves in place. In order to make sure that the units had a really consistent stain, I added some more stain to go into the joints where the trim had natural wood exposed since it had been cut, as well as the first couple inches of the sides of the shelves. I also added coats to the side where the natural plywood was being exposed. I know they probably won't be seen, but I figured if I was already this far into it, I might as well cover everything except for purely the back edge. This was my first time doing a cabinet project like this, and I learned a lot in the process, but ultimately I was pretty pleased with the final result.
Cool.
I then installed them in my girlfriend's closet and organized all her shoes before she got back from vacation. Here was her reaction. She didn't want me to have her sound posted, but I think you can tell by her body language that she was pretty excited, which made the whole process totally worth it. So thanks guys for watching. If you like this project, I have a couple projects in the works, so if you want to sub to my channel, that would be awesome. If you could like, and if you have any comments about the video, or if you want to learn about some plans and you have an interest in how I made these, I can do a more in-depth review of the dimensions and actually doing like an actual layout of all of the cuts and measurements of this. So just leave a comment below if you'd like to see that. So thanks again, and I will see you on another one of my videos. Peace.